So what's just happened, just so we remember, is that he met this man and this woman, and he met those two guys that one wasn't interested in spiritual life at all, and the other one was interested and sort of followed him and invited him for food and all of that. And now he's hanging out with his wife, and he wanted to borrow his philokalia. And so he loaned it to him for 24 hours, but the guy wants it for more now. And he said, no, I'll handwrite you a copy down, whatever is there, and give it that you can have. And so he was doing that. And so he picks up there, I at once, and with pleasure, made a copy of the sermon that I had read. Actually, it's the sermon we were looking at, St. Simeon, the theologian. He read it to his wife, and both of them were pleased with it. And so it came about that at times they would send for me, and I would go, taking the philokalia with me, and read to them while they sat drinking tea and listening. See, so there's precedent for you having glasses of water and tea and dinner while someone's reading holy books to you. Once they asked me to stay for dinner. The steward's wife, who was a kindly old lady, was sitting with us at a table eating some fried fish, when by some mischance she got a bone lodged in her throat. Nothing we could do gave her any relief, and nothing would move the bone. Her throat gave her so much pain that a couple of hours later, she had to go and lie down. The doctor, who lived 20 miles away, was sent for, and as by this time it was evening, I went home feeling very sorry for her. That night, while I was sleeping lightly, I heard my starets' voice, that's his guru. I saw no figure, but I heard him say to me, the man you are living with cured you. Why then do you not help the steward's wife? God has bidden us to feel for our neighbor. I would help her gladly, I answered, but how? I don't know of any means by whatsoever. Well, this is what you must do. From her earliest years, she has had a dislike of oil. She not only will not taste it, but cannot bear even the smell of it without being sick. So make her drink a spoonful of oil. It will make her vomit, and the bone will come away, and the oil will soothe the sore that the bone has made in her throat, and she will be well again. And how am I to give it to her if she dislikes it so? She will refuse to drink it. Get the steward to hold her head and pour it suddenly into her mouth, even if you have to use force. I woke up and, well, I went straight off and told the steward all of this in detail. What good can your oil do now, said he. She is hoarse and delirious, and her neck is all swollen. Well, at any rate, let us try. Even if it doesn't help, oil is at least harmless as a medicine. He poured some into a wine glass, and somehow or other we got her to swallow it. She was violently sick at once, and soon vomited up the bone and some blood with it. She began to feel easier and fell into a deep sleep. In the morning, I went to ask after her and found her sitting quietly taking her tea. Both she and her husband were full of wonder at the way she had been cured, and even greater than that was their surprise that her dislike of oil had been told to me in a dream. For apart from themselves, not a soul knew of the fact. Just then the doctor also drove up, and the steward told him what had happened to his wife, and I in turn told him how the peasant had cured my legs. The doctor listened to it all and then said, neither the one case nor the other is greatly to be wondered at. It is the same natural force which operated in both cases. Still, I shall make a note of it. And he took out a pencil and wrote in his notebook. After this report quickly spread throughout the whole neighborhood that I was a prophet and a doctor and a wizard, there began a ceaseless stream of visitors from all parts to bring their affairs and their troubles to my notice. They brought me presents and began to treat me with respect and to look after my comfort. I bore this for a week, and then, fearing that I should fall into vainglory and harmful distraction, I left the place in secret by night. That's the sign right there of somebody who has overcome an ego. They run away from fame and run away from attention like that. But this quietness, this companionship with the divine, it reminds me of a story in the Eternal Companion, Swami Brahmananda. When he was trying to figure out what day he should take a trip, and some brahmachari was sitting there becoming rather impatient with him and said, why do you have to consult all of that just to come up with a time to leave for the trip? Let's just go. And the Swami says, I don't do anything without Thakur's permission. And the young brahmachari was like, what do you mean by permission? I mean, all of us act and think that God has approved it or inspired it. And Brahmananda said, no, it is not like that. And the brahmachari was like, you mean to tell me you actually talk to God? God actually tells you what to do. And Brahmananda, it says, got very grave and very serious and looked directly at the young brahmachari. And he said to him, truly I tell you, I do not do anything unless God directly tells me that it is to be done. When I was reading that book, I just got chills from that. But you see, it's being talked about here in the same way, that when you've surrendered your mind at the feet of the beloved, when you've given up your very own self in that quest for the divine, that you have, like Eckhart Tolle talks of, you have this infinite well of wisdom, of knowledge that is within you, and that all of the information necessary for navigating the moment perfectly belongs to you. And so it's no wonder to hear these kinds of stories. I'm often very uncomfortable with miracles and things like that. But I like what Vivekananda says, there's not such thing as a miracle. There's just things that we don't yet know how to explain. And so this quietness of mind and this surrender to the divine can perhaps open your mind to some of these things, that the divine will in fact move through you to be such a help in this way to others. I bore this for a week, and then, fearing that I should fall into vainglory and harmful distraction, I left the place in secret by night. Thus, once more, I set out on my lonely way, feeling light as if a great weight had been taken off of my shoulders. The prayer comforted me more and more, and so at times my heart bubbled over with boundless love for Jesus, and from my delight in this streams of consolation seemed to flow through my whole being. The remembrance of Jesus Christ was so stamped upon my mind that as I dwelt upon the gospel story, I seemed to see its events before my very eyes. I was moved even to tears of joy, and sometimes felt such gladness in my heart that I am at a loss at even how to tell of it. Doesn't that sound a lot of like what Brother Lawrence used to describe in his relationship with the divine after he'd been practicing for 10 or 15 years? And so these are experienceable. Do your practice, love the Lord, surrender yourself, be steady. Even if you fail, you get up and try again, and you just keep going. You just keep going. And this will come to you. Brahmananda promised it. He said, go and do your practice for a year. And if you haven't felt any bliss, come back and slap me. So this experience of your inner bliss, it's the whole reason they say that you are Satchitananda. They don't, all the scriptures don't call you Satchitananda because you're stupid and have no bliss. They call you that because your very nature, it wafts off of you all the time. It's just clearing the mind and seeing the way things are, rather than having the mind tell you the way things are all the time. Because that noise from the mind is what blocks this from you, that disallows your experience of your own nature, your divine nature. It happened at times that for 3 days together I came upon no human dwelling, and in the uplifting of my spirit I felt as though I were alone on the earth, one wretched sinner before the merciful and man-loving God. This sense of being alone was a comfort to me, and it made me feel my delight in prayer much more than when I was mixing with a crowd of people. This is quite often why you find that these sages and these monks and sadhus, that they like to be by themselves. They prefer that loneliness, that direct experience with God and God alone, not to be distracted by anything else or pulled away. At length, I reached Irkutsk. When I had prayed before the relics of Saint Innocent, I began to wonder where I should go now. I did not want to stay there for a long while. It was a town in which many people lived. I was walking thoughtfully along the street when I came upon a certain merchant belonging to the place. He stopped me and said, "Are you a pilgrim? Why not come home with me?" We went off together, and he took me into his richly furnished house and asked me about myself. I told him all about my travels, and then he said, "You ought to go on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. There are many shrines there like the ones which are not to be found anywhere else." "I should be only too glad to do so," I answered, "but I haven't that kind of money. I can get along on dry land until I come to the sea, but I have no means of paying for a sea voyage, and it takes a good deal of money to do that." "How would you like me to find the money for you? I have already sent one of our townsfolk there, an old man, last year," said the merchant. I fell at his feet, and he went on to say, "Listen, I will give you a letter to my son at Odessa. He lives there and has business connections with Constantinople. He will be pleased to give you a passage on one of the vessels to Constantinople, and to tell his agents there to book a passage to Jerusalem for you on another boat and pay for it. That is not so very expensive." I was overcome with joy when I heard this, and I thanked my benefactor for his kindness. Even more did I thank God for showing me such fatherly love and for his care for me, a wretched sinner who did no good either to himself or to anyone else, and ate the bread of others in idleness. I stayed 3 days with this kindly merchant. As he had promised, he wrote me a letter to his son, and so here I am, now on my way to Odessa, planning to go on till I reach Jerusalem. But I do not know whether the Lord will allow me to venerate his life-giving tomb. And so this life seems so magical, and it is, if you're not willing to take that kind of chance, to just in a moment look to the Lord, look to the divine, look within, for what happens next. It's you don't make your own plan and lay it out independently. You can do that. Mother will let you do that, of course, and she'll let you go and have your time. But it won't be that. It won't have the depth and the richness of life made in the moment, in the spirit, in walking with the divine like this. It's just fascinating how this is not a narrative of fiction. That if you're willing to test these things, if you're willing to let go and just go, you'll find these things to be true for yourself in the way that life unfolds, the way that things seem to just happen and to fall into place in just the most delightful and yet unexpected ways. That's spiritual life. That's walking with the divine. It's quite a lovely idea. A real challenge. The Peace Pilgrim did that. But you have to be willing. You can't go and just think, "Oh, well, I'll do it and God will keep me in 5-star hotels and feed me good food the whole way. And if he doesn't, then then he's failing." The Peace Pilgrim, she left her house with two goals. She only made 2 commitments. I will walk until I'm given rest. I will fast until I'm offered food. Those were the only 2 commandments she obeyed for herself, for her walk. And she walked back and forth across this country many times talking about peace. And she said there were a few times where she had to sleep under a bridge. But if you read of her experience, you can order the book for free online at the Peace Pilgrim website, peacepilgrim.org, I think it is. They give her story away for free. And you can see her on YouTube also talking about peace, the Peace Pilgrim. But just a real sadhu of the modern age. She was a suburbanite housewife. And one day she just got so tired of the condition of the world. It was back in the height of the Cold War. And so she just decided she couldn't deal with that anymore. She couldn't live in a world like that anymore. And she walked out to talk about peace. And she refused to talk about anything but peace as she walked. And just an amazing story showing that, yes, even in this country, a life of faith is possible. She was fed, she was housed, she was offered rides and transport and given places to speak. And she actually lectured at universities just because she was open and surrendered to the divine. So it's a challenge. It's laid open to you. Know that the God of love is intimately interested in your life and will take care of your soul, if not the body and mind. Chapter 3. Just before leaving Irkutsk, I went to see my spiritual father, with whom I had often talked, and I said to him, "Here I am actually off to Jerusalem. I have come to say goodbye and to thank him for your love for me in Christ, unworthy pilgrim as I am." "May God bless your journey," he replied. "But how is it that you have never told me about yourself, who you are, nor where you come from? I have heard a great deal about your travels, and I should be interested to know something about your birth and your life before you became a pilgrim." "Why, very gladly," I answered. "I will tell you all about that also. It's not a lengthy matter." Oops, just a second, somebody's here. Okay, sorry about that. "Why, very gladly," I answered. "I will tell you all about my life. It's not a very lengthy matter. I was born in the village in the government of Orel. After the death of our parents, there were just the two of us left, my brother and I. He was 10 and I was 2. We were adopted by my grandfather, a worthy old man and comfortably off. He kept an inn which stood on the main road, and thanks to his sheer goodness of heart, a lot of travelers put up there. My brother, who was a madcap child, spent most of his time running about the village. But for my part, I liked better to stay near my grandfather. On Sundays and festivals, we used to go to church together. And at home, my grandfather often used to read the Bible, this very Bible here, which now belongs to me. When my brother grew up, he took to drink. Once, when I was 7, we were both of us lying down on the stove, and he pushed me so hard that I fell off and hurt my left arm, so that I have never been able to use it since. It is all withered up. My grandfather saw that I should never be fit to work on the land and taught me to read. As we had no spelling book, he did so from this Bible. He pointed out the A's and made me form words and learn to know the letters when I saw them. I scarcely know how myself, but somehow, by saying things after him over and over again, I learned to read in the course of time. And later on, when my grandfather's sight grew weak, he often made me read the Bible aloud to him, and he corrected me as he listened. There was a certain clerk who often came to our inn. He wrote a good hand, and I liked watching him write. I copied his writing, and he began to teach me. He gave me paper and ink. He also made me quill pens, and so I learned to write also. Grandfather was very pleased and charged me thus: God has granted you the gift of learning. It will make a man of you. Give thanks to God and pray very often. What a great granddad. You know, this giving thanks and praying often, that's the antidote to developing ego. You know, we don't store those things up inside as our own accomplishments. Everything is offered in the moment. That's the secret of karma yoga. Do nothing for its result. Why would that be a commandment? Do nothing for its result. It seems so obvious. The only thing we would only do things for a result. But see, it's the antidote to delusion. It's the antidote to Maya, actually. That by stepping outside of the idea of cause and effect, which is what it is to work without an idea of result, step outside of cause and effect, keep the mind in the moment. You see, it does all of the purifying of the mind and aids in the silence of the mind so that we can see things rightly. So this being gracious, it's not just to walk around being a person of gratitude, which is a wonderful thing, but that gratitude serves a deeper purpose. It rescues you from your own delusions. It rescues you from ego and brings you closer to being aware of the divine, to the subtle thoughts in the mind. We used to attend all the services at church, and we often had prayers at home. It was always my part to read the 51st Psalm, and when I did so, my grandfather and grandmother made their prostrations or knelt. When I was 17, I lost my grandmother. Then grandfather said to me, "This house of ours no longer has a mistress, and that is not well. Your brother is a worthless fellow. I am going to look for a wife for you. You must get married." I was against the idea, saying that I was a cripple, but my grandfather would not give way. He found a worthy and sensible young girl about 20 years of my age, and I married her. A year later, my grandfather fell very ill. Knowing that his death was near, he called for me and bade me farewell, saying, "I leave you my house and all that I have. Obey your conscience, deceive no one, and above all, pray to God. Everything comes to him. Everything comes from him. Trust him only. Go to church regularly, read your Bible, and remember me and your grandmother in your prayers. Here is my money that I also give to you. There is 1,000 rubles. Take care of it. Do not waste it, but do not be miserly either. Give some of it to the poor and some to God's church." After this, he died, and I buried him. It was a beautiful set of instructions right there. He said once, deceive no one. Be truthful, deceive no one. Ramakrishna just happens to say that in the Kali Yuga, truth is the austerity of the age. So telling the truth. So deceive no one. Obey your conscience. Always do what you know is right. Right? Brother Lawrence really, really drives that home. If in this moment you're doing something you shouldn't do, stop it. If you're not doing something you should do it. And then go on. Don't give it any thought at all. And if you live like that, you will touch the divine. You'll come to this highest realization. Above all, pray to God, this constant communion with the divine. You know, it doesn't mean be talking and chatting all the time with God. It means to be in the presence, to have your innards completely open, your mind completely open to the presence of God, to the presence of the beloved. That awareness of awareness, and all the knots will be untied. Everything comes from the divine. Trust him only, he says. Trust him only. He is the only substance of the universe, the only thing that is substantial, the only thing that does not disappear, does not change, does not go away. Trust him only. Go to church regularly and read your Bible. Yes, that holy company. Sri Ramakrishna says, the fastest way to know the divine is to maintain holy company, because we become like the people we hang out with. You know, we slowly take on each other's characteristics. Read your Bible, yes, the study of scripture, the talking with your guru, the contemplating the lives of the saints and the stories of the sages. Remember me and your grandmother in your prayers. Here is my money that I also give to you. Take care of it. Don't waste it. Don't waste your finances. But don't be miserly either. Give some of it to the poor and some of it to holy men. Is that not the duty of the householder? The duty of the householder is to provide for himself and for his family, and if there's other money left, It's the householder's responsibility to take care of the society around him. And then also his responsibility to take care of holy men, so that because that's that's how the scriptures teach. My brother grew envious because the property had been left wholly to me. His anger against me grew, and the enemy prompted him in this to such an extent that he even laid plans to kill me. In the end, this is what he did one night while we were asleep and no guests were in the house. He broke into the room where the money was kept, stole that money from a chest, and then set fire to the room. The fire had got hold upon the whole building before we knew it, and we only just escaped by jumping out of a window in our nightclothes. The Bible was lying under our pillow, so we snatched it up and took it with us. As we watched our house burning, we said to one another, "Thank God the Bible is saved. This, at least, is some consolation in our grief." So everything we had was burned, and my brother went off without a trace. Later on, we heard that when he was in his cups, he boasted of the fact that he had taken the money and burned the house. We were left naked and ruined, absolute beggars. We borrowed some money as best we could, built a little hut, and took up the life of landless peasants. My wife was clever with her hands. She knitted, spun, and sewed. People gave her jobs, and day and night she worked and kept me. Owing to the uselessness of my arm, I could not even make bark shoes. She would do her knitting and spinning, and I would sit beside her and read the Bible. She would listen and sometimes began to cry. When I asked, "What are you crying about?" "At least we are alive, thank God," she would answer. "It touches me so, that beautiful writing of the Bible." Remembering what my grandfather had bidden us, we often fasted. Every morning we said the akathist of Our Lady, and at night we each made 1,000 prostrations to avoid falling into temptation. Thus we lived quietly for 2 years. But this is what is so surprising. Although we had no understanding of interior prayer offered in the heart, and indeed had never heard of it, but prayed with the tongue only, and made our prostrations without a thought, like buffoons turning somersaults. Yet in spite of all of this, the wish for prayer was there, and the long prayers we said without understanding did not seem tiring. Indeed, we liked them. Clearly, it is true, as a certain teacher once told me, that a secret prayer lies hidden within the human heart. The man himself does not know it. Yet working mysteriously within his soul, it urges him to prayer according to each man's knowledge and power. You know what he's talking about there is that inner longing for the divine. That prayer that lies within the heart of every person, regardless of who they are, is that prayer for love, that prayer for knowledge, that prayer for immortality, that prayer for our divine nature. And it manifests, that prayer is what manifests every person's life. And it manifests to that person, whatever that person believes is his being, is his fulfillment. So the whole, this prayer is being uttered by every human being alive in the world as they search for love. They search for immortality, they search for wisdom. And they find it in the things of the world, or think that they will. They'll find that, immortality through power, through good health. They'll find that oneness through relationships. They'll find that security through fame or through relationships, all those things. You see, we all have that divine love inside us. It's the only motivating power in the universe, Swamiji says. And everything that we do in a day is a prayer. It's a prayer for that perfect love and all of the characteristics that come along with it. And if we know that prayer is there, and we know what that prayer is for, that adds greatly to our ability to renounce and to find that divinity within, and to detach to let go of the things that have taught us our addictions and our bad habits, through that recognition of our inner prayer. And when all of those things are seen through and we've laid them down and we focused all of the love in our heart into a singular love for the divine, that is the way, Thakur says, God will show himself or herself to you at that time. So this is a beautiful, beautiful thought. This prayer that's hidden within the human heart. This prayer for love and freedom. After 2 years of this sort of life that we were leading, my wife was taken suddenly ill and with a high fever. She was given her communion, and on the 9th day of her illness, she died. I was now left entirely alone in the world. There was no sort of work that I could do. Still, I had to live, and it went against my conscience to beg. Beside that, I felt such grief at the loss of my wife that I did not know what to do with myself. When I happened to go out into our little hut and caught sight of her clothes or perhaps a scarf, I burst into tears and even fell down senseless. So feeling I could no longer bear my grief living at home, I sold the hut for 20 rubles, and such clothes as there were of my own and my wife's I gave away to the poor. Because of my crippled arm, I was given a passport which set me free once and for all from public duties, and taking my beloved Bible, I set straight off without caring or thinking where I was going. But after a while, I began to think where I would go, and said to myself, first of all, I'll go to Kiev. I will venerate the shrines of those who were pleasing to God and ask for their help in my trouble. As soon as I had made up my mind to this, I began to feel better and a good deal comforted. I made my way to Kiev, and since that time, for the last 13 years, that is, I have gone on wandering from place to place. I have made the round of many churches and monasteries, but nowadays I am taking more and more to wandering over the steppes and fields. I do not know whether God will vouchsafe to let me go to Jerusalem. If it be his will, when the time comes, my sinful bones may be laid to rest there. And how old are you? The man asked. 33. Well, dear brother, you have reached the age of our Lord, Jesus Christ. Right. So you just see, he just laid his life before God, even as a worldly man, before he even had learned this prayer or this practice, even before he felt that inner bliss. His first inclination when he lost everything was to go on pilgrimage, to see those who had pleased God, to go pray at their shrines. It's such a pure love, such a simple insight. I love that. Yeah. Chapter 4. But it is good for me to hold me fast by God, to put my trust in the Lord God. The Russian proverb is true, which says that man proposes, but God disposes. Said I, as I came back again to my spiritual father. I thought by now I should certainly be on my way to Jerusalem, but see how differently things have fallen out? Something quite unlooked for has happened and kept me in the same place here for another 3 days, and I could not help coming to tell you about it and to ask your advice in making up my mind about the matter. It happened like this. I had said goodbye to everybody, and with God's help started on my way. I had gotten as far as the outskirts of town when I saw a man I knew was standing at the door of the very last house. He was at one time a pilgrim like me, but I had not seen him for about 3 years. We greeted one another, and he asked me where I was going. God willing, I answered, I want to go to Jerusalem. Thank God. There is a nice fellow traveler for you, he said. God be with you, and with him too, said I. But surely you know that it is never my way to travel with other people. I always wander alone. Yes, but listen, I feel sure that this one is just your sort. You will suit each other down to the ground. Now, look here. The father of the master of this house, where I have been taken on as a servant, is going under a vow to Jerusalem, and you will easily get used to each other. He belongs to this town. He is a good old man. And what's more, he is quite deaf. So much so that however much you shout, he cannot hear a word. If you want to ask him anything, you have to write it on a bit of paper, and then he answers. So you see, he won't bore you on the road. He won't even speak to you, even at home, where he grows more and more silent. On the other hand, you will have a great man to help him you will be a great help to him on the way. Sorry. On the other hand, you will be a great help to him on the way. His son is giving him a horse and a cart, and he will take it as far as Odessa and then sell there. The old man wants to go on foot, but the horse is going as well because he has a bit of luggage, and some things he is taking to the Lord's tomb. And you can put your knapsack in with them as well, of course. Now, just think, how can we possibly send an old deaf man off with a horse all by himself on such a long journey? They will have searched and searched for somebody to take him, but they all want to be paid such a lot. Besides, there's a risk of sending him with someone we don't know, for he has money and belongings with him. Say yes, brother, it will be really all right. Make up your mind now for the glory of God and the love of your neighbor. I will vouch for you to his people, and they will be too pleased for words. They are kindly folk and very fond of me. I've been working for them for 2 years now. So this is how you watch the play of Mother, the play of the divine. Just as things sort of just begin to happen, it's it's one of my favorite things about this little experiment that I'm on here in Lafayette, Colorado. You just show up. Like, I don't know. I have no idea what happens. How does one do this? And instead of listening to the ego pretend that it knows and to making all kinds of plans that will give it comfort and make it secure, you just become okay with unknowing. You just be fine with the infinite possibility of every moment, right? And you just keep going forward. And one story after another happens, one thing after another happens. And it's always just out of left field, completely unexpected, and yet seems to somehow make it perfect as it all comes together. So this is a life of faith that he's talking about here. All this talk had taken place at the door, and he now took me into the house. The head of the household was there, and I saw clearly that they were quite a worthy and decent family. So I agreed to the plan. So now we have arranged to start with God's blessing after hearing the liturgy 2 days after Christmas. What unexpected things we meet on life's journey. Yet, all the while, God and his holy providence guide our actions and overrule our plans, as it is written, "It is God which works in you both to will and to do." Yes, God is the only substance. That means he's your only substance. Everything that you do, he has willed, and everything that you have done, he has done. It's to arrive at that knowledge that we call realization. On hearing all this, my spiritual father said, did somebody say something?
Oh, I was just going to, how does one reconcile that whatever I do is the Lord doing it? But yet I have to ask the Lord, right? In terms of be open. I guess it does go hand in hand.
Yes, I mean we have to be where we are, right? And so even though we can take a truth like this and say this is the actuality, when Ramakrishna says God alone is the doer, you are just an instrument. He's saying the same thing to us, that it's God that does everything through us. We don't see that, right? We don't see that because we're ego bound, and we see ourselves as separate from God. But when we say that love is the only motivating factor in the universe, and that everything we do in a day is done for love, right? Then we understand God is love. And so God is motivating everything that you do in your life. Now, if you can get rid of that ego, it manifests more purely and it's more easily identified as the movement of the divine. When we're under ego's delusion, we tend to do small things that feed the ego, things that are selfish, things that are for a hunger or for a thirst. And it makes it more difficult to see. It's just like in a dream, in a dream, who is that person in the dream? You are that person in the dream, but in the dream, you're not that person. In the dream, the person that is you is the one who's asleep in the bed. In that metaphor, it's God, and within God, that whole world of the dream that you're experiencing is in the mind of the dreamer. And you, who in waking hours are identified with the dreamer, in your sleep, in your delusion, you're just a person within a dream. And you see all the things that you're doing and are responsible for, but who is doing them? Within the dream, you think it's me, I'm doing that. But you can't move of your own power. You have no substance to you whatsoever, were it not for the dreamer, the one sleeping in the bed. Right. And so you are not the one doing, and you are not the one being, and there isn't even a you. And actually everything that's being done and accomplished is actually not being done and not being accomplished. But within the context of the dream, that seems ridiculous and untenable until you wake up. And then you see it wholly. You see it completely. You see, we can't see that right now because we're in mind. And the mind has several delusions that we are bound to. The cause and effect for one, the past, present, and future for another, the separation, the unknowing, the ignorance that's in the mind, that it can only get things through the senses, and that there's an infinite amount of knowledge that can't fit through senses. And there's an infinite number of senses that we don't have to sense all of the information that we don't know is there. And so this is where we stand. But it's not necessary to reconcile it. You can't reconcile it.
Right. I guess you're looking at it from two lenses. From the individual lens, you have to you look at it as you need permission, or you are an instrument. But from God's side, it is Him who does everything. So in our mind, we have it there, but we can't really experience it from the absolute point of view. But from an individual point of view, we can theorize it.
Yes, in the state that we're currently in, there will come a day when you will see it. There will come a day when you will come to know it. And it will be a matter of obvious understanding. But until then, we carry on. We tie it in the corner of our dhoti, like Thakur says. Take your Advaita and tie it in the corner of your dhoti. Let it inform you along the way. Hold the ideal. Hold the starlight in front of you. But just keep going forward until it's seen. And try and live according to that.
I'm going to be dead, Swami. I'm going to be dead and gone.
See, there's your first mistake. You've never been born and never died.
But this individual self will be dead and gone.
No, I know, it's hilarious. It is funny because Swami Prabhupada kind of laughed about that once at the dinner table. He says, it is very odd. He says, as devotees, the first thing we were told in Vedanta is that we've never been born and we never died. And our first question to a sadhu is, what happens when we die? This is the story. But what you're doing right now is the right response. You just laugh. You understand. You have no idea. And use that to whittle away the ego. Use that to whittle away the ego. This unknowing can be very useful. Right? This ignorance can be very useful in understanding that it makes it easier to let go. you know, when we come to realize this is crazy, you know, when we're faced with the only solution being surrender, you know, just let go. Is that Swami? I told that story. I don't remember who the Swami was. I heard it from the Swami himself, though, that he was driving and the car went out of control, and he knew it was going to end up in an accident. And somehow he says, you know how time slows down in those situations. He says, I let go of the steering wheel and I folded my feet up on the seat, and I sat there and just gave it to the Lord. And he said somehow the car rolled over into the ditch and came to a stop, and everything was fine. But that's really what has to go on. You come to a place where you're like, this thing's going into a wall. There's nothing I can do, you know, and that surrender is what we're called to. And whatever brings us there, either the impossibility of the task or an understanding of our ignorance, or just a sheer belief in its impossibility, whatever it is that causes that surrender, that's all that's necessary, that one cry to the mother. So as it is, we tie it in the corner of our mind. We know this is the ideal. We keep generally trying to walk toward it. We keep generally trying to see it in the day-to-day actions. We look for evidence of it. That's a big part of my motivation, actually, in all these silly little experiments that I tell you about, you know, laying there, feeling my toes on the sheets and wondering, what am I really feeling? You know, is it really toes on sheets, or where is that information coming from? So it's that, you know, let these words cause some doubt in your assumptions, and use those doubts in your assumptions to do some experiments, to start probing this world that you think you understand, and start looking more closely at things, and take a chance every now and then, you know, leave your monastery, leave your home, go off for a while on your own, and sit in the company of the divine and watch. You'll see these things happen. This is truth, this pilgrim's adventure. His experience is verifiable and repeatable.
Yeah, the Lord has to give me some time, Maharaj.
The Lord will give you all you need. Fear not.
Yeah.
The Lord's not, for the Lord, you know, that's the thing that's so odd.
I know. And then right now, my mantra, go with the flow, go with the flow.
Just be. I mean, everything is yours already.
I know. But that's from the absolute point of view.
Well, it is, but you know, it's also true. Even if it's from a particular perspective or from a particular understanding, it's no less true at this moment. And there's a certain amount of comfort that we can get from that, even in our ignorance. You know, when I sit down to do my meditation, there's not a whole lot of me that's sitting there aware in a real way of this divine, everywhere present and always perfect. But I hold that in my mind, and when other things come up to counter it, or ideas come that are against it, or just even stories of my own mind enter in, I push them away and stay alone with this thought for a moment, stay alone with this idea, and become more accustomed to having that idea dwell in my mind, rather than all the reasons that it can't be true, or probably, you know, is ridiculous, or, you know, naive, or all of those things.
You know.
Yeah, we just put them aside, and for a moment, enjoy the possibility. Enjoy the possibility. And one day, you know, something will happen. It might be a small thing. It might be a huge thing. It might be realization. It might not. It might just be a touch or a taste. You know, Mother does these things in different ways. But one day, unexpectedly.
Yes.
Yeah. One day, unexpectedly. Yeah, especially for you. It is God working in you, both to will and to do. On hearing all of this, my spiritual father said, I rejoice with all my heart, dear brother, that God has so ordered it that I should see you again, so unexpectedly and so soon. And since you now have time, I want, in all love, to keep you a little longer, and you shall tell me more about the instructive experiences you have met in the course of your long pilgrimage. I have already listened to with great pleasure and interest to what you told me before. I am quite ready and happy to do that, I answered, and began as follows. A great many things have happened to me, some good and some bad. It would take a long time to tell of them all, and much I have already forgotten. For I have tried especially to remember only such matters as guided and urged my idle soul to prayer. All the rest I rarely remember, or rather have tried to forget the past, as St. Paul bids us when he says, forgetting the things that are behind and stretching forward to the things that are before, I press on toward the goal of the prize of this high calling. It's wonderful. So this is another way of talking about attachments, you know. He's like, I don't remember, which is the same way of saying I don't attach to. I don't attach to things that that have happened unless they have been a benefit to my quest for prayer. You know, so in the way that we live, we try not to attach to things. Don't store your favorite things in your mind. Store things that have been helpful to spiritual life. Store things that have been helpful to manifesting, to uncovering your nature, your understanding of the reality of the world. And forget what lies behind. Forget your stories. Forget your failures. Forget the reasons you can't do this. Forget all of that and be in the moment and stretch toward your ideal. You know, keep your ideal squarely in front of you and just reach for it. And just forget everything else. Nothing else is as important. All of the sages say that this is the most important thing in life, to come to your spiritual awakening, to come to your understanding of the nature of the universe and of yourself and of your immense intimacy with the divine, with love itself. Forgetting the things that are behind and stretching forward to the things that are before, I press on toward the goal, to the goal of the prize of this high calling. My late guru of blessed memory also used to say that the forces which are against prayer in the heart attack us from two sides, from the left hand and from the right. That is to say, if the enemy cannot turn us from prayer by means of vain thoughts and sinful ideas, then he brings back into our minds good things we have been taught and fills us with beautiful ideas, so that one way or another he may lure us away from prayer, which is a thing he cannot bear. It is called theft from the right-hand side, and in the soul, putting aside its converse with God, turns to the satisfaction of the converse with self and with created things. You know, so anything that this prayer that he's talking about for us in our practice is meaning our awareness, you know, our awareness of our own awareness within, that attention, you know, and all kinds of things. You know, he here is you know, doing that anthropomorphizing, I think that's the word, all of these ideas into demons and devils and whatnot. But it's your samskaras, you know, it's your samskaras, your wrong thinking, your wrong ideas, your habits, your old habits that are established that aren't helpful. All of those things, you know, are pushing against your constant remembrance of the divine and getting you tangled up in the ordinary, getting you tangled up in the stories of the day and of the moment. And in all of that rigmarole, you forget the stillness within. You forget the peace within. You forget your establishment in self. And so we have to be on guard for that by not remembering and holding on to all of our favorite things, but holding on to the helpful things, so the things that have taken us forward. He taught me, therefore, not to admit during times of prayer even the most lofty of spiritual thoughts. Yes, keep the mind silent. Don't let anything into that communion. Don't let anything destroy that divine presence, your awareness of that divine presence of God. And if I saw that in the course of the day, time had been spent more in improving thought and talk than in actual hidden prayer of the heart, then I was to think of it as a loss of the sense of proportion or a sign of spiritual greed. This is above all true, he said, in the case for beginners, for whom it is most needful that time given to prayer should be very much more than that taken up by other sides of the devout life. Right? This hails back to Sri Ramakrishna every day, laying in the dust. And remember, he used to roll his face in the dirt and say, "Mother, another day has passed and I have not yet seen you. Will I have to live this life in vain? When will you show me yourself? When will you reveal these truths to me?" You know, every day he would lay down and he would count, take accounting of the day. Did he live according to his ideal? That's an important thing to do for us, to measure our life by that. What is the most important thing in life? According to our teachers, it's the realization of God. Then look at your day, the way you lived today. Did it mark that out? If somebody looked at your goings on today, would they say the most important thing in this person's life is their spiritual realization? If not, then get on it. That's all. Don't waste your time with shame and guilt. Just get on, just get on with it. And it's a moment for moment thing. You never have more than this moment in front of you. And so it's not that you have to remember the ideal for the rest of your life. What do we know of the rest of our life? You only have to remember your ideal in this moment. So do it. Remember your ideal right now, and remember it now, and remember it now. And as soon as you realize that you've forgotten it, get back on and remember it now, and remember it now. And if you slip off for a few minutes and you realize it, then get back on and remember it now, because it's only the now you have to work with. The ego likes to make things look like big things. I have to renounce that. I can't have a piece of cake for the rest of my life. Nobody says that. Just don't have the piece of cake right now. Or right now. Or right now. You see, life comes at us very simply in the moment. And all of our practice happens in the moment. And our realization will happen in this same moment. We will not be in a different time, in a different place. We will always be here, and it will always be now. And that's all we can work with. That's all there is. So your whole spiritual life, your whole life happens here and now, right? All right, that's a good stopping place. So why don't we, if anybody has, I'm seeing a few things pop up in what looks like the comments, but they disappear too fast for me to read them. So let me see. I'm going to unpin myself. And hey, Walton, good to see you.
Likewise. I was saying it seems easy for me to put off my ideal, but like you came back with like the perfect response to the statement. So it kind of, I don't know, maybe gave me a little clarity of like, maybe the reason I feel like I'm putting off my ideal is because I'm picturing the idea of my ideal in the future and not just trying to implement my ideal right now in this moment, instead concerned about how I'm going to implement it into the future.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the ego delights in that, because that fear that comes up from that, the impossibility of that, the ego always wants to come in, we can do this. And it gets that type A personality engaged and make it happen. Not necessary. It's like Brother Lawrence is just so so smooth in the way that he says, if I thought in this moment there's something I should be doing that I'm not doing, I just do it. And if there's something I'm doing that I shouldn't be doing, I just stop doing it. He says, I don't bother with guilt. I don't bother with apologizing. I don't deal with all that stuff, because that just is noise. It's just going on up here. What the divine cares about is this moment. Be with him. Don't be with your promises and your vows and your thises and your that's. Just be here now, be in the presence of God and enjoy it. And if you forget it, again, same thing. Just bring it back. That's all. No big deal. Just bring it back and keep it up. Keep going. And each moment that you do that successfully is what we call a samskara established, a good samskara. That's how we set the sail. Once we set the sail, grace, the winds of grace will carry us. But if we can't keep our mind on the divine, then how will we be carried by grace? Because with the memory of the divine, with the thought of the divine, is the divine grace, the divine presence. And that grace is what allows us to let go. The mind of its own accord without grace won't let go. It keeps hold of its karma tightly in its fist. It makes you pay for everything, because everything has a cause and everything has an effect and everything happens in time. And the mind is vicious in that way. It will hold you to the fire. And that's the whole point of grace. And grace is the only thing that's strong enough in us to give us permission to forgive ourselves, to let go of our own faults, to stop defining ourselves as weak or small or impure or worthless or whatever, or also to stop ourselves from thinking we're great and awesome and incredible and wonderful. All of those things as well. So it's grace alone, that is the key to silencing the mind. It's the pacifier which keeps the mind quiet, and it's hidden in the name, in the name of God, or in the mantra. That grace is hidden there, and that's how we access it. And it's through that love that we start growing and developing, that we find our inspiration to open to more. It's grace that makes us understand we don't need to do anything. And that doesn't mean that, the license to do anything. It actually does. You can do anything that you want, but you're going to pay for it. Not in a hell. You're going to pay for it right here and right now. With every deed comes its suffering and its bliss together in a package. It cannot be separated out. That's how we know that God is everywhere present and always perfect. It's like he will not let you find comfort in this world. He will not as a punishment, but because he doesn't want you to be deluded forever. Right? That's why he put that in the story of the Garden of Eden. He puts that cherubim with the flaming sword outside the gate to prevent Adam and Eve from coming back into paradise. Well, that flaming sword is the flaming sword of desire. Desire is always described as a flame in the Bible. So it's the flaming sword of desire, and the Lord will not let you back into the garden. Why? Because there's another tree in the garden, right? There were two trees in the garden. Remember what they were, anybody? There was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Everlasting life?
The tree of immortality. Yes, the tree of immortality is there. And so God will not let you eat of the tree of immortality until you have conquered desire. Otherwise, the curse would last forever. So you have to conquer desire. And through that conquering of desire, you become aware of your immortality. And you can eat the fruit of that awareness. So it's an amazing story. Garden. The more I think about that story, the richer it gets. The more every time I read it, I can pull something else out of it. It's just delightful. Anybody have a question or a concern? All right. It's a delight to see you all. And we'll be back on, I'll be back on Friday night probably, but I guess I'll see all of you again on Monday. Or unless you call before then.
Feeling so jealous, Maharaj. You are going to be in the wilderness in the company of the beloved. I'm telling you.
No,
So wonderful. Have a good one, Maharaj.
Yeah.
I'm jealous of me too, actually. I can't wait. It's going to be so lovely. But this is the thing. Jealousy, why waste our time with that? But make your own. Thakur says it's one of the most important things for us is every now and then he says, go off by yourself, away from all the things that influence your mind. Leave your phone away, leave your computer away, leave your schedule away, leave your lover away, your children away, your bills, leave everything for a day or two, once a month or every now, whatever you can manage.
Yeah.
But do it. Most of the time we just don't think about it. We just don't make it happen. But most of us can manage to get away, even if you just go rent a room in a hotel somewhere and get away from your family for a day.
I don't have to do anything of that sort. I'm all by myself here.
Well, now I'm jealous of you. See, you live in your own monastery.
I can bring the wilderness to her and just. I'll bring a raccoon, some birds, throw it in her house.
Oh, wonderful time, Maharaj.
What entertains me is how entertained you were by that, Priya. That was great. Yeah, but I say that with some earnestness, do take care of yourselves. Take care of yourselves. Get out there and this love is manifested through attention, through this kind of attention to detail in your life. If you're doing a shrine room, if you're going to set up a shrine, the best way to generate that mood or that atmosphere of holiness in the shrine is go through and clean every single nook and cranny. Literally take a rag and 1 inch at a time go along the baseboard and clean every bit of dust off of it. Go to the windowsill. Wash every little bit of it, push the windows up, wash the cracks around that, wash the inside, wash the outside, vacuum the carpet and make special attention to every corner. It's a heck of a lot of work. But I tell you, when you finish and you sit down to do your practice in that shrine, there will be an atmosphere there. There will be an atmosphere there because you have invested your being in it. You have invested your love in it. And that's how those things happen. Every temple that you've walked into where you felt that sheer silence or that stillness of an atmosphere, it's there because of everybody's investment, everybody who left a prayer there, everybody who left an hour of meditation there. That's what makes that place holy. And so your life is exactly that. If you give the attention to the way that you live, if you give attention to yourself as the divine being, even in your own mind, as you recognize, as you talk to yourself in your mind, there is no listener but the Lord himself. It will change the way you talk to yourself. It will change the things you think of. It's this kind of investment in the moment, the details of the moment, not for a result, but for the thing itself that will bring us. I learned that in the shrine. I told that story because I've been in we had a beautiful shrine. In one sense, it was a beautiful shrine, but from a brahmachari's perspective, it was a nightmare of a shrine because it had 10,000 little lotus leaves everywhere and 6 million little unreachable corners behind it and all kinds of foofy little this and that's everywhere. And there were 3 cupolas, right? And it was just, I had to go in there, for every single one of the big celebrations and get in there, literally fold a napkin so that little corner of the napkin would stick out. And I'd spray it with a little bit of that of ammonia. And I'd go into each one of those nasty little boogers of a leaf of a lotus. It would take me like 8 or 9 hours after Greg was gone. Is Greg here? I don't know. But Greg left and, I did. So for the whole 9 hours the day before any of our worships, I'd have to do this. And I remember one day I'd had enough. I was like, I'd had enough. And I literally sat, don't tell anybody this, especially Prabhupada, because boy, he'd pull me by the ears, no doubt. I sat on the shrine. I sat right there on the shrine, right next to Thakur's cupola. And I was holding the dirty rag in my hand, and I was sitting there, bent over like this. I was looking at Thakur, and I said, this room is the cleanest room in this monastery. It's always spick and span in here, and I am always in here cleaning it. I said, this is ridiculous. Why do you have me doing this? I said, it's frustrating. It's hard. I hate it. I really, and I sat there with it. I sat there with these thoughts, and, I never know how to say these things because it's not like anything supernatural happens, but you get an understanding. And that day I heard my inner voice say to me, you're always doing it to get it done. That's why you never enjoy doing it. He says, be with me and clean the shrine. And I promise you, it will become one of your favorite things to do. That is life. That is life. All the things that you're tired and sick of and want to get done and finished with, pull out your karma yoga. Do them for their own sake in the moment with every bit of love you've got. And it will become your favorite thing. Life will manifest its bliss to you. God will manifest her presence to you.
Now I understand what Mahayogananda was doing when he came here. He was sitting and cleaning out each and every nook and corner of the temple almost.
Yes. Yes, it is the way. That's karma yoga. It's investing every moment with love. And God becomes vitally present, or the awareness of God becomes vitally present. The God doesn't become present. He's always present. But your awareness of that presence lights up, and the heart gets infected, and the whole life becomes this bliss that we just read about in the Pilgrim's life. That's how it happens. Live the moment fully as the moment and invest it with love in whatever you're doing, no matter how mundane it is. That's the meaning of life. And no matter what, you can be the garbage man, you can be the mail clerk, you can be anything, and you will have a rich and fulfilling life. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. That's the secret. None of us has a particular thing that we do that's important. Everything that we do is important by how we do it, by investing yourself in it. And that's the way. All right.
Precious.
Thank you, Maharaj. Have a blessed time.
Indeed, I will. I'll take lots of video.
Yes, have a good time, Swamiji.
Maharaj.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim.
Swamiji.